Internet creepypastas are one of the most popular subgenres of our favorite internet campfire tales. Technically, every creepypasta derives from the internet, but for this iceberg, I'm specifically looking for stories related to the internet, computers, or in some cases, technology. Browsing the internet late at night is something that all of us have done at one point or another. These stories are those that you might stumble upon during your late night ventures. Oh, and don't mind that reflection in your monitor. It's probably nothing. This is Volume 1 of the Internet Creepypasta Iceberg. Let's start our descent. The first internet creepypasta that we'll be looking at is one that most of you already know, not for the infamy or virality, but more so for how prevalent it's been within the community. Annie96's Typing is a true classic in the world of creepypastas. It's one of the first stories you're likely to hear if you're just getting started with internet horror. In fact, it might even be the story you'd run into even if you were just browsing the internet. It's a story that is easy to spread and one that many have. The story is credited to Pascal Chatterjee on the Creepypasta wiki. Annie96 appears on screen and sends a message to her friend McDavie. She asks if he's asleep. "No, guess you're not either," he responds. They start talking about pretty mundane stuff, a few jokes here and there, your standard late night conversation. Annie says that the wind is really loud for some reason. David says that he can't hear any wind, just the rain. The conversation shifts as Annie says she hears footsteps on the gravel outside her window. David tells her to have her crazy dad go check it out. Annie reminds him that her parents went on holiday together and she's all alone. She continues by saying that the footsteps seem odd somehow and asks if she should look out the window. David tells her that it's probably nothing and if she's home alone, she probably shouldn't look. A moment later, she says that she sees someone in her garden, a man, and he's on his hands and knees looking for something in her bushes. It actually appears that he might be digging. David jokes that he might be high and she just needs to move away from the window. Annie tells David to stop messing with her, saying that the man in the garden looks just like him. He has the same football jacket and everything. She says that she was banging on the window to get his attention, but thinks that it's odd that he's still sending her messages without his phone in his hand. David says that there's no way that's him, and that she's starting to scare him. He says he would never do anything so mean. She starts to believe that it's not him, until she sees his name on the back of the jacket. The other David has seen her, smiles, and makes his way towards the house. David tells her to call the police, but she doesn't respond. He calls for her, but they won't arrive for 30 minutes at the earliest. She finally does respond and says that she's hiding in her closet with a knife, as she heard it break in. It then starts to call out to her, and it doesn't sound like David at all. The voice is deep, echoey, and wrong. It keeps saying, "Come out, Annie. I just want to look at you." It keeps repeating this phrase over and over again. Finally, Annie tells David to stop thinking about her. That this creature seems to be connected to him, so maybe it would go away if he did that. It didn't make sense to him, but he tried anyway. Her responses started coming in, and it seemed to have worked. The thing had just left, like it had never been there in the first place. Annie asked David what she should tell the cops when they arrive. He said to tell them everything, and that he's glad she's safe. Annie says that she didn't know that's how he felt about her, and wanted to see him tomorrow. David says he'll come by right away. Annie replies with a smiley face and says, "Great, can't wait." David types one last thing. "Annie? Annie, how do I know this is you?" This is followed by the message, "Annie96 is offline." Username 666 is an infamous creepypasta that appears in video form on YouTube. The original video was posted in 2008 on a channel named Nana825 763. This was one of the earliest examples of someone using YouTube as a medium for horror content. The video appears to show what happens when a person searches for a channel named 666 on YouTube. All they see is that the account has been suspended. The user in the video then starts to refresh the page. With each refresh of the page, nothing appears to happen. After a while, the recommended videos lose their thumbnails and only have 666 written in them. The refreshing continues until everything starts to deteriorate. Red covers the screen in a macabre vision of hell. All the videos on the site are grotesque and tinged in the same color. Flesh and blob-like masses cover the backgrounds of the site. The user clicks on the videos and is met with pulsating bloody beings with inhuman movements. The visuals are garish, but so is the audio. Gurgles, chewing, the sound of things touching a wet surface. Every number on the site has 666 in it, including the view count. The mouse begins to frantically float about the screen, trying to backspace and close out. The sound of rejection from their PC rings out with each attempt. Even the background on their PC appears changed, now showing black tendrils behind the open window. All attempts to close out of the tab are fruitless. Even trying to shut off the computer doesn't work. The video continues with a thumping sound being heard over the gurgling and strained whispers, until finally, a hand reaches out and the video cuts away. This is username 666, and is one of the earliest forms of video creepypasta on the internet. It was very popular and even today is considered a great piece of the dark side of YouTube. It has amassed an astounding 17 million views since its debut. The video would be followed up by a video titled Another YouTube. This video was released in 2010 and has a similar vibe to the original. It starts with the user going to YouTube on his PC and clicking through settings until they see a tab titled Another YouTube, with a try button underneath. He clicks it and sees a different version of YouTube for a split second. The icons go to the same fleshy look as the prior video before flashing back to normal with another click. He decides to click it again and search the site. Everything has a disgusting quality. Red tinges everything again. This time he clicks on the videos and sees distorted messes of red, blue, and green. There appear to be eyes and mouths tinged in red across the screen. Eyes seem to be watching from every corner of the site. His webcam comes on and shows his hand on the mouse. He closes it multiple times, but it keeps coming up. More notices appropriate the screen, leaving him with no idea how to close everything. It gets more and more intense until we see him finally pull the plug on his PC. Generation Lost is a story uploaded to the Creepypasta Wiki in 2011 by user Panko Bell. The story is pretty short, so we'll be reading it in full. In 2007, a British audio programmer and electronic musician attempted to make a video documenting Generation Loss, which is when one tape is copied from another, but each incarnation wears the quality down by a certain amount. He used a spare tape recorded by a friend in the early 90s, featuring footage of a nearby intersection, edited his own music into the clip, and then copied it back and forth until the footage had deteriorated enough. However, this clip circulated on 4chan's Sector B in mid-2008, with first-hand reports claiming that watching this entire video in one sitting caused a sharp burning sensation in the back of the skull. Common side effects included hearing screams deep in the tape's grinding music, seeing human shapes in the static, and seeing a disturbingly thin young boy in the window to the immediate left of the yellow traffic light, who is staring directly at the viewer. While the effects can be avoided by pausing the video and watching or reading anything else for any amount of time, it is unknown what will happen to an individual if the entire video is consumed without stopping, as these effects vary from person to person. Some users have reported long-term effects of seeing the skeletal boy around them in public, or hearing vague whispers and clicking. One user reportedly took his own life out of desperation. He did this by throwing himself out of his apartment window. His body discovered to have severe bruising on the back of his skull. At this time, I'm unsure if this story was actually circulated around 4chan or not. As far as I can tell, it hasn't. That doesn't mean that it didn't in the past though, as that's just how this site works. It feels like a story that would circulate the X boards though. There is footage that coincides with this particular story which you are watching now. The idea of seeing something in the corrupted footage is a cool and disturbing idea. Imagine watching an old degraded film, and every time the corruption shows up on screen, you see something getting closer. The Blind Maiden website is a creepypasta uploaded in 2014 and written by Space Maniac 888. The story is about a supposed website that will give you the greatest fright of your life. It was quite popular in the online sphere back when it was uploaded. The website is called blackmaiden.com, and it offers those brave enough to search it out the choice to experience the ultimate horror. The site supposedly houses a doomed spirit who can enter your home if you choose to access the website. There are some stipulations for accessing it though. It needs to be midnight where you live when you try to go on the URL. It also needs to be the night of a new moon. You must be alone and turn off all lights so that none but your computer screen are visible. Accessing the site will flood your screen with images. Kids with no eyes will face you directly. This is followed by text that reads, "This website will take you to a whole new level of horror. A horror that will use all 5 of your senses. You must be very careful not to click on anything by accident. You will be faced with a real experience of absolute horror. Click the accept button to engage actively in the experience." You are then presented with 2 options. Accept to continue to the website, or decline. Clicking decline will show you gruesome images. Gore will fill your screen enough to make any person sick. If you click accept, on the other hand, a sinister silhouette will start walking towards you on your monitor. The screen will shift until the figure seems to enter a room. Then you'll notice that you can see your back on the monitor. A tap on your shoulder can be felt before being swung around to meet face to face with the blind maiden. She then proceeds to pluck your eyes and take a photo of your face. You have just joined the website's homepage. This is your reward for going to the website and completing its ritual. This story is more of a warning not to go looking for the site. But that probably won't stop you now, will it? Barbie.avi is a classic in the world of creepypastas. It's one that's been told many times in many different formats. This story was uploaded in 2009 and was received very well, quickly becoming a popular story in the community. It also had videos attached that were supposed to be what we were seeing in the story, but I'll get to that later. The story begins with an unnamed narrator talking about a party he was attending at a friend's loft. He rented a loft in the industrial side of town, which meant it was surrounded by mostly abandoned factories and buildings. The narrator decides to crash on his friend's couch since he'd been drinking too much that night. He wakes up at 4 a.m. to use the bathroom and notices the sun isn't up yet, but he can vaguely see the urban decay by a soft blue light from the window. He says that he actually likes places like these, that he was comforted by them somehow. Laying back down, he tries to fall back asleep. 45 minutes go by and he decides to give up and call his girlfriend to ask for a ride. She says she'll be there in about 30 minutes, so he decides to wait by the window since his phone is dying. Staring out the window, he starts to doze off. He's nearly asleep when he hears a loud crashing sound from outside the window. At first, he didn't see anything, until he notices a computer and monitor lying on the ground near a trash pile across the street. His girlfriend arrives, and as the pair are leaving, he decides to check out the computer as he remembers his friend needs spare parts. Luckily for him, the tower seemed in perfect shape, while the monitor had seen better days. He grabs the tower, loads it into the car, and heads home. A week later, he was grabbing the tower from his girlfriend's trunk. He'd actually forgotten about it until then. He brought it home and was skeptical about whether it would work or not. To his surprise, it started up with Windows XP. The first thing that he did was try to see if any files were left over on the computer. There wasn't much to be found as it appeared to have been wiped clean. Further searching brought him to what he'd been hoping to find, a single folder titled Barbie, with an AVI file of the same name inside. This is an excerpt from the story. The movie was about an hour long and was made up of what seemed like raw exported footage. The footage was of this woman sitting on a chair and talking against a white backdrop. I skipped through most of the movie and it was all the same continuous shot. Then I decided to sit through the footage to find out what she was talking about. 15 seconds into the footage, the audio goes completely bad and her voice is drowned in harsh, static background noise. I couldn't make out a thing. So I imported the footage into the final cut and tried to mess with the levels to isolate her voice. It helped a little, but I still couldn't hear what she was saying. I was intrigued now, and I began to really pay attention to her face and body language. It seemed that she's being asked some kind of questions, because she stops at times to listen and then continues talking. About 15 minutes into the footage, her face begins to redden and contort as if the questions are starting to bother her. But she continues to answer them anyway. Shortly after, she begins to cry. She sobs hysterically for the duration of the film. One of the few words I could lip read was skin. She repeats this word many times throughout the footage, and at one point she even pulls the skin from her arm and mouths the word. She seems to be unhappy with her skin. There's much more I have to get off my chest, but it is getting late and I can't go on. I will share the rest tomorrow. God save my soul. I kept on building and building, and about 40 minutes in, she's crying so hard she can barely look at the camera. She stops talking at this point, and the rest of the footage is just her crying with her head down. Oddly enough, she doesn't get up or move, the screen just fades to black. I was dumbfounded. The narrator rewatched the video multiple times that night. He wanted to see what other secrets this video was holding. As he mulled over the footage for a fifth time, he saw that there was actually more footage in the timeline. It cuts to black for about 2 minutes of that, then the screen comes back. There appeared to be an accidental recording of someone walking on a train track. A pair of legs were seen walking along the tracks, but the footage was extremely shaky. This lasted for about 6 minutes before the legs were seen heading over a makeshift bridge made of plywood and going into the woods. This excited the narrator because he knew that there were train tracks near where he was. They even looked similar to the ones he'd seen in the video. This could turn into a little adventure with maybe some answers to his questions ready for him to find. Excitedly, he told his friend Ezra to go with him. When he had arrived, though, Ezra was still sleeping and declined to go. That didn't stop the narrator from grabbing his flashlight, pocket knife, and camera and going it alone. He parked at the train station and started following the tracks. 2 hours passed before he saw something that looked promising. A makeshift bridge of plywood that turned into a full plywood path lay ahead of him. It was just like in the video. He walked slowly down the trail, listening for anyone or anything that might be nearby. It was quiet, more than he'd expected. The quiet was more nerve-wracking than comforting, though. Nearing the edge of the trail, the tree line opened up to an old house. It looked to have been abandoned for decades at least. Maybe 2 or 3 max. He crouched at the tree line for a while, just examining the house, and took a few photos. After a long while, he mustered up the courage to approach the house. At first glance, it looked like a normal abandoned home. The windows were all broken, the siding was peeling, and the doors looked older than time itself. But as he entered the home, he noticed some odd things. On first inspection, these things didn't really stick out to him. It was only retrospectively that he took note. All the doors were old and open, except for a door that presumably led to the basement, which was new and locked. There was also the bathroom. The mirror for some reason was clean, when everything else was covered in a thick layer of dust. There was also a clear tarp that lay in the bathtub, with some water droplets still on it. That's when a clear and loud moan could be heard from somewhere in the building, and he jumped out one of the windows. He ran from the property and didn't stop until reaching his car. That was the last time he'd been to that building. Even though in retrospect, the moan was likely from an old pipe in the building or something. He wondered why the water was still on though, at an old abandoned building in the middle of nowhere. The first thing I want to note about this story is that there are videos attached to it. These are the videos that we saw in Barbie.avi. They show a woman who appears to be giving an interview. These videos are creepy because of the editing and the story attached. The audio is garbled and you can't really tell what she's saying. The woman is missing an arm, and this seems to hint at the story of the house a bit. The missing arm could be related to what is happening in the basement of the house. Like they are removing body parts, either willingly or not. The tarp is also a big hint at this, as it could have been used to take the organs. There's a lot of speculation on the story since nothing is outright stated. That's actually one of my favorite parts of the story. I like the unknown, and I feel like it's more fun to speculate in most cases. As far as the video goes, there was a search effort to find the woman in the videos. She was found by all sources I've looked into, but I won't be divulging her name or anything here. Just know that she is okay and her video was just used for the story. There's even her full interview on Archive of Our Own if you want to watch it yourself. The story likely originated from 4chan, like many other early creepypastas. It spread from there to the rest of the internet. This story might not be the scariest, but the video and the timing of its release make it a classic in the community. Annora Petrova is a creepypasta written by One Page Wonder. The story was uploaded to the Creepypasta Wiki in 2014. The story is told through an email between Annora and a friend named Bree. This creepypasta was one of the more popular internet-based stories since it used Wikipedia as a plot element. The story starts with a plea from Annora. She is begging Bree not to delete this email. In it, she's going to explain what has happened since the last time they spoke. They hadn't spoken in quite some time, and this is really just a last chance for her to reach out to her friend. Annora was a figure skater, and she wasn't half bad. In 8th grade, she was nervous about a Crystal Classic competition she was competing in the next day. She wasn't able to sleep that night and did something that most people do. She Googled herself. The usual stuff popped up. There are people with her name living different lives and the like. As she was scrolling down the Google search, she saw a Wikipedia article with her name on it. Curiously, she opened the article. At first, it was mostly skating facts, where she lived, and other general information, which would be creepy enough on its own, but the page continued. She saw a part that said she won the Crystal Classic competition. This surprised her, but also gave her confidence. Maybe her club or her dad had made the page, someone that was trying to give her hope and the confidence that she needed to win. The next day, the competition commenced and she actually won, just like the Wikipedia page had said she would. It was exactly right. This led to her getting a coach named Sergey, who saw real potential in her. Annora began checking the page frequently before every competition. Each competition was listed, and each time her placements were exactly as they were told on the page. It even said that she would win regionals at 15, which she did. This is when Annora was pulled from school and told that she had a real shot at the Olympics. Sergey and her parents agreed on a training regimen, and she started immediately. Her skating was good, great even, but she wasn't improving at the rate Sergey had said she should. Sectionals was the next day, and she wasn't feeling confident, so she went on her Wikipedia page again. She decided to edit the page, so that she was the winner of the competition, even though her friend Bree was being called out as the favorite. After she tried to save her update, the page instead changed to this message. Annora is selfish, and she's going to get what she deserves. This caused her to break down, which led to her looking awful at the competition the next day. As she was sitting in the stands watching Bree skate, she suddenly found herself on the floor with blood coming from her forehead. Bree's blade had come off of her skate and shot up at Annora. Annora was blamed for Bree's skate breaking because she was supposedly the last person around them. She was banned from all further competitions. Sergey called her a disgrace and everyone walked out on her. The Wikipedia page was also getting worse. Every time she would check it, it would say something awful about her. She tried calling Wikipedia and leaving a complaint about the page, but they couldn't find it. There was no page dedicated to her. While home alone, she decided to check her Wikipedia page to see if it had been taken down yet. There was another update that read, Annora Petrova is a pathetic little orphan. She freaked out and tried to call her parents multiple times, but all she got in response was a horrible laugh. After the accident, she was given her parents' phones. There were no records of her calls to them. She couldn't get that laugh out of her head. It was all too much for her, as she was now more alone than she'd ever been before. When Annora turned 18, she took her parents' settlement money and left the country. She moved to Switzerland, where she planned to reinvent herself. She was going to skate for the ice circus. Well, audition anyway. Things were starting to look up for her. Of course, she just had to check her Wikipedia page one more time. Old habits die hard. The page only said one thing. Annora Petrova died friendless and alone. That's not the worst part though. The date of death is the same as the day she's sending this email. She's terrified sitting alone in her hotel room. She doesn't know what to do. She's going to send this email as soon as it's done. She's waiting for midnight. All she can do is keep refreshing her page. She has to know what happens next. That's the story of Annora Petrova. An obsession with finding out what her future might hold leads to her destroying her present. The idea is probably one of my favorites in the world of creepypastas. I love stories that have a website where you can go to find out something that is supposed to happen, like fortune telling online. The story also has a screenshot of her Wikipedia page. The page has her date of birth, May 5th of 1991, and her date of death, October 24th of 2010. This likely means that this story was uploaded sometime in 2010 before being uploaded to the Creepypasta wiki. The interesting part to me is that there's actually more story within the screenshot of Annora's Wikipedia page. In the further information section, there's more story. Let me read it to you. You should learn a lesson from Annora. Annora delved too deep and got what she deserved. But enough about that little piggy. Let's talk about you. All alone and reading this drivel. Tell me, what would you like to be when you grow up? Annora had great aspirations, and I believed in her. At least I did for a while. Such a little piggy. But then, you're not like her, are you? No, I see something great in you. Something unrealized. We could go great places together, you and I. Yes, the more I think about it, the more I realize that this isn't just a case of happenstance. Great things can happen when you stumble upon a page like this. Think about it. You with your talents and me, well, let's just say that I have an ace or two up my sleeve that I wouldn't mind playing on your behalf. So tell me, what do you desire most? Oh, you're thinking about it? And the answer is yes. Together we could accomplish great things. I could help you so much. I could take you places that you've never dreamed of. But first, you're going to have to do something for me. This is where the page ends. There's a cryptic figure who seems to control the paths of those that come in contact with the Annora page. This is likely who took out her and her family. Now he extends an offer to us, the reader. Do we take it? After what happened to Annora, what's the worst that could happen? The weird part of YouTube is a short story, but also not. It's easier to explain if I just read it in full. Everyone has been to the weird part of YouTube. If you haven't, then I suggest you try to do so. It's a very simple process. In fact, to make it even easier, I will lay it out in step-by-step form. Step 1. Important. You find any video you want. Absolutely anything you want. A cat video, a music video, anything. Something from Japan will work best. Step 2. Click on the strangest related video. The absolute most mind-blowing looking thumbnail or title. Step 3. Continue step 2 until the most liked comment is, "I'm in the weird side of YouTube again," or something along those lines. Now, this alone isn't all that scary. It's mostly just funny. You can laugh at failed ads or absurd stuff from different cultures. Sometimes it gets scarier. A dancing girl with no arms or legs, someone with loads of tattoos eating glass, a crazed hillbilly ranting about how the government will kill everyone. It gets stranger though. Dig deep enough and you can find actual death. I don't mean like the news stories on people getting killed, I mean full-on amateur snuff films. No After Effects or CGI, real people getting killed. You're wondering why YouTube doesn't take them down, aren't you? Well, there are 2 reasons for this. First, there are days worth of video being uploaded every minute, so much that it just can't be analyzed by the YouTube staff. They take down anything that isn't art, but even that slips through. Second, money. YouTube only pays attention to the stuff that pays, is protected by copyright, or gets large amounts of views in a short amount of time. That last one is the reason for the 301 views phenomenon. Due to these reasons, there are plenty of people who can easily upload almost unnoticed videos. Some of them are truly unnoticed with only 2 or 3 views. There are a ton of these amateur snuff films that just require a while of searching. Just try for a few hours. Just be warned, you might not hate what you see. You might just want to see more. Or you might just want to try making one of these videos. After all, they have to come from somewhere. This isn't really a creepypasta and more of a reality. There is so much dark, twisted, and grotesque stuff that can be found on YouTube. The depths of the site are basically unlimited. You can find videos about every fetish or fear. Most of the content you will find on the site won't be real though. There are lots of videos of supposed terrible things, but most of those are staged for shock value. Even so, that doesn't discount all the very real stuff hiding within the walls of YouTube, just waiting to be viewed. Another classic era creepypasta is The Woman in the Oven. It was uploaded to creepypasta.com in 2008, but I feel like it was online much before that. The story is one that I remember a friend texting to me in a chain letter that was spreading around my school. The story was short enough that it could be posted anywhere and not lose any of its creep factor. The story probably would have fit better in my lost episode Iceberg, but for some reason it always struck me as an internet-based story. Maybe it's because of the way in which I was exposed to the story. The Woman in the Oven is rather short, so let's read it together. During the summer of 1983, in a quiet town near Minneapolis, Minnesota, the charred body of a woman was found inside the kitchen stove of a small farmhouse. A video camera was also found in the kitchen, standing on a tripod and pointing at the oven. No tape was found inside the camera at the time. Although the scene was originally labeled as a homicide by police, an unmarked VHS tape was later discovered at the bottom of the farm's well, which apparently dried up earlier that year. Despite its worn condition and the fact that it contained no audio, police were still able to view the contents of the tape. It depicted a woman recording herself in front of a video camera, seemingly using the same camera the police had found in the kitchen. After positioning the camera to include both her and her kitchen stove in the image, the tape then showed her turning on the oven, opening the door, crawling inside, and then closing the door behind her. 8 minutes into the video, the oven can be seen shaking violently, after which point, thick black smoke can be seen emanating from it. The camera then continued to point at the oven for another 45 minutes until the batteries apparently died. To avoid disturbing the local community, police never released any information about the tape, or even the fact that it was found. Police were also not able to determine who put the tape in the well, or why the physical stature of the woman on the tape did not in any way resemble the stature of the woman who was found in the oven. Normal demonetization for normal people is a popular story that was written by Barbie.avi. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he's created some very popular creepypastas, including NES Godzilla, which I covered on the channel already, and Faith Buddies, which I covered in my lost episode Iceberg. These stories are well written, and this story is no different. The only issue with covering this story is the subject matter can be bad for YouTube, so I apologize for the forced censorship. Normal for normal people was uploaded to Barbie.avi's DeviantArt page in 2011. The story was spread to the wiki soon after. This led to many different creepypasta narrators picking up the story and spreading it to their audiences on YouTube. An unnamed narrator tells us that the internet has some pretty sick stuff on it if you look hard enough. Just about every piece of grotesque intrigue can be found somewhere online. This brings him to the topic at hand. He'd recently received an email from someone that he doesn't know. It was a chainmail that read, "Hi there. Found this site. It's very nice. Thought you might like. Normal for normalpeople.com. Pass it on for the good of mankind." This was your standard chain letter, only the links seemed interesting. He was used to getting these kinds of emails, but this one had piqued his interest. Since he was already bored that day, he decides to follow the strange link. A very generic looking site greeted him. In fact, the site barely looked professional. It was clear that from the outset, the site's creator had also had a tenuous grasp of the English language. This could be seen in a very long-winded rant on the site's homepage, which the narrator didn't screenshot or remember what was said. At the bottom of the page was the site's motto, "Normal for normal people," a website dedicated to the eradication of abnormal sexuality. Exploring the site further, he realized that there wasn't anything on it. There were no further links, or anything of that sort. As he was about to leave the site, he noticed something odd with the rant section. Each word of the rant appeared to be a hyperlink. Deciding that he was still interested in where this rabbit hole led, he clicked on one of the words and was taken to a new page. He clicked different links for 5 minutes and kept seeing new pages full of new links. Nothing of substance was found though. Just as he was getting annoyed and ready to check out, the last link he clicked downloaded a video file. It was titled Peanut.avi. Opening the video, he was greeted with a 30-minute video of a woman, man, and a dog in a kitchen. The woman would make a peanut butter sandwich, hand it to the man, who would then feed it to the dog. This lasted the entire 30 minutes. It was in no way connected to the title of the site. How could anyone get turned on by this? Even with all of the out there kinks that people have. The narrator was curious still and ended up finding a dozen videos. This is when he decided to go to his favorite image board and post what he'd found. Only, he found that a thread already existed for the site. He clicked through it and found 24 other videos that had been found and posted by others. That was enough for him to decide to venture deeper into the site. This is when he started to find the real weird videos. Starting with lickedclean.avi, which was a video of a repairman fixing a washing machine. As soon as he's done, a man enters the shot and begins to lick the washing machine. This lasts for 7 minutes. Jimbo.avi is the next video. It shows 5 minutes of an obese mime doing his act. It was pretty funny overall. The last 2 minutes of the video cut to the mime sobbing in the corner. Diana.avi is the first video to have anything adult in it. The video appears to be a normal interview with a woman that plays violin. She can be seen holding the violin and talking, but she keeps looking off to the side every few minutes. It was later noticed that you can see a man in a chicken mask, off screen, playing with himself. Jessica.avi is another 4-minute video. This one has a woman being interviewed outside, but the cameraman keeps zooming in on the street behind the woman. Those that have seen the video have struggled to figure out exactly where this video was shot. To this day, no one has been able to identify the street or why he was so fixated on it. Tonguetied.avi has an old woman making out with a mannequin before the video cuts to black. When it comes back, the woman is nowhere to be seen and the mannequins have multiplied. They are surrounding the cameraman and all staring blankly at him. Stumps.avi shows a man with no legs breakdancing on a DDR mat with a radio playing music in the background. The man collapses from exhaustion and asks someone off screen if he can stop. A voice can be heard shouting at him to continue dancing, which he does. He starts to cry as a voice off camera screams. Privacy.avi has a woman on a mattress touching herself. This is all happening while the man from Stumps.avi is walking around on his hands. He appears to be wearing a goblin mask. The door in this interview room is open now, where in every other video it was closed. Something can be seen racing by the door. The final video was titled Useless.avi. This video showed a blonde woman, one that was being interviewed earlier. She was tied to the mattress from before and tape covered her mouth. The door swings open and shows a man in a black suit. He doesn't enter the room and instead brings a chimpanzee into the room. He looks like he's been shaved and painted red. It's clear they did something to work him up into a frenzy as he looks aggressive. The chimp is let into the room and soon starts to maul the tied down woman. He kills her before starting to eat her. This goes on for 4 minutes before the video comes to an end. The narrator went back to the thread to discuss his findings, only to find it deleted. The entire thread is gone, and every one that he tries to make gets deleted. The site has also been wiped from the internet, likely due to the authorities finding it. The site had some truly dark secrets. There was so much more that he wished he could find. It was really for the best, though. Who knows how depraved the site could have truly become. I Read My Sister's Facebook page is a story that was posted to the No Sleep subreddit in 2017. The story was posted by user SleepyHollow101. The story focuses on someone who just lost their sister. There was an accident, and her naturally clumsy sister had fallen down the stairs, something she'd done plenty of times when they were younger. Only this time, she'd broken her neck during the fall. This left the narrator with access to her sister's Facebook page. It wasn't on purpose, though. She just knew her sister's info since she was given it years ago. Part of her healing process was to go through her sister's Facebook page and see the things she liked and interacted with. This led her to looking into her sister's messages. She tried not to, but ultimately would give in when she saw one from Ted. Ted was her sister's husband, the one who had looked ill at the funeral. The message came through as if he were admitting to her sister some final thing. He laments about how angry he was, not just at the situation, but angry in general. The narrator had been at the store to pick up iron pills for her sister as she had anemia, which caused bruising on her arms. That's when she got the call that her sister had an accident. Her whole perception of the situation was starting to shift, though, as she continued reading Ted's messages. He admitted to being angry at the narrator's sister, and that he knew that she was planning to leave him. He knew that she was going to stay with her friend Frida, because she didn't feel safe with him. That only made him more angry. He admits to not meaning to hurt her, but that she made him angry, so it was her fault. That's when the narrator gets a message from Ted. He asks who's reading these messages. This causes her to slam her laptop closed. For a while she panics, before deciding to go to the police with the screenshots of the messages. A manhunt is started a few days later, though Ted is already gone. He left the house with his keys and wallet. The narrator hopes that the police don't find him, though. If they do, he'll most likely just get life in prison. No, that wasn't what he deserved. He deserved far worse. She was determined to find him first, so she could make him choke on his own blood. Click the Link was posted to creepypasta.com in 2015 and was posted by Anonymous. A lot of creepypastas don't have an author, and instead were just stories being spread around online. That was usually what made a good creepypasta. Not knowing the origin always gave it a bit of mystery. The story follows an unnamed narrator who loves horror movies. They used to even wake up in the early mornings as a child just to watch the ones that came on TV. They would usually get caught by their parents, but they would never get punished for it. Fast forward to college, and the narrator explains how they love watching horror movies on Netflix. The good, the bad, the really bad. They had seen just about every horror movie on the site, which was a lot. They were getting bored of the library and wanted more, but didn't really know where to look. They expressed their frustration on a forum that they browsed with some of their college friends. They all seemed to agree that Netflix's horror section was just not cutting it anymore, especially when you've seen it all. That's when one of their friends, a girl by the screen name of Scream Queen 69, brought up a weird message they'd received. The message was from a user with the screen name Behind You, spelled kind of weirdly. They had sent a link over to her and said that she would experience a new kind of horror if she clicked it. She was kind of weirded out because she didn't know this person, so she didn't respond. That's when she got a few more messages, which were pretty mundane, just asking if she'd watched it yet and what she thought. A day later, the group met up on campus and Scream Queen showed them all the messages. The user had sent a repeated phrase hundreds of times. Click the link was repeated with no spaces. This worried everyone, as they were clearly spamming her, but it got worse. She wasn't just getting the messages on the forums, but also on her school email and phone, which they would have no way of knowing. Scream Queen got so many messages, and for so many days in a row, that she was having a hard time sleeping. She would hear the sound of messages on her phone at all times throughout the day. This worried everyone, who tried to block the number and report it, but to no avail. Day and night, those messages would continue. Eventually, they would just show the link with no other text. 2 days went by and the author hadn't heard from their friend. Before they could check on her, it was reported by her roommate that they smelled something bad in their dorm room. She was found dead in her room, sitting in her chair in front of her laptop. Sleeping pills, that's what the report said. The narrator didn't buy the story and went to her room to check it out. They went under the guise that they lent her some stuff and wanted to get it back. While inside her room, the narrator finds her laptop still sitting on the desk and decides to open it. There was no password and the screen flashed to the last thing she'd looked at before passing. It was the same forum they'd all frequented, only she had thousands of messages in front of her. One of them was purple, meaning she'd finally caved and clicked the link. The narrator decides to see where the link leads and finds a very dark room that appears on screen. As they lean closer towards the screen, they see posters on the wall, a person sitting on a bed and another behind them, with a wide toothy grin. That's when they make the discovery that the webcam is now on. Funnymouth is another classic-era creepypasta by Slimebeast. Slimebeast has made some of the most well-known stories online, namely the Abandoned by Disney series, which I covered in a previous video. Needless to say, Slimebeast has created some truly creepy tales for the internet. Funnymouth was uploaded online around 2013. The story would become pretty popular, even winning Creepypasta of the Month. The story would spread all over the internet, but the best place to read it now is on Slimebeast's personal website. Here you can also find other stories that they've created. The story begins with a conversation on a forum. A user named Funnymouth popped into a chat and started saying weird things. These are what they said. Hello everyone tonight. I like to lick the blood. Out of in the person. I see your handsome face. Don't be so sad about it. Come on. Smiley face. They then left the chat. This confused the two chatters, Lemon Lime Skull and Ghost George. Lemon Lime Skull is our narrator for the story. He thinks it's odd that this person would just show up in their chat, stating weird stuff, and then leave. The chat was a forum for helping those with computer issues. They were used to trolls and annoying people popping in to mess with users. They usually just wanted to get a rise out of someone, but Funnymouth just popped in, said weird stuff, then left. The two noticed that Funnymouth was in another chat now. Thinking it would be interesting to see what his goal might have been, Lemon follows to the new chat. When he entered, he noticed that it was just him and Funnymouth in the chat, titled Blood. In the chat, Lemon had a strange conversation with Funnymouth. Nothing they said made any real sense. They just seemed to be a bit weird. Not in an offensive way or anything, just a little odd. They would also post his emoji a lot. It was likely they were implying that they were watching him. Later that night, Lemon got back on to check and see if anyone else had got on. He entered the chat and saw that everyone was idle, so he was alone on there. He typed a few sentences, hoping to draw someone's attention, but got nothing in response. Then he noticed there was a single message in between his. It was from Funnymouth, and just like before, he posted the looking at you emoji. It was weird though, because it didn't say Funnymouth was in the channel. This gave Lemon a strange, I shouldn't have done that feeling as he sat alone by his computer. It was starting to creep him out, which led to him finally deciding to close the program. He messed around on the internet for a few more hours before going to sleep around 2 in the morning. This is when Lemon says that they never have nightmares. In fact, he's only had 4 nightmares in his adult life, each that he remembers vividly. He has the ability to lucid dream, and force others to live out whatever horror is happening to him in his dreams. The first nightmare he remembers happened in 2005, and he had a dream that his ex was strapped to a medical table while an inexplicable creature sucked her brain out using an organic machine. The second dream had Lemon going to a medical facility that was experimenting with new ways to save lives. This led to a display with 3 car crash victims who were still alive in disturbing ways. A woman was seen with her face having been almost entirely ripped off and hung loosely around her chest. The third nightmare had 2 men accosting Lemon. One was poking and pinching him, while the other verbally assaulted him. In his dream, he was able to make the 2 men turn on each other. This led to one of the men reaching forward and pulling the tongue out of the other man. He then pulled out his eyes until they became grotesque. The current dream that Lemon was having was a recurring one. He laid in a field with trees and a breeze. His eyes were closed in his dreams as he tried to enjoy the weather. Something cold and slimy was squirming on his neck, and he pulled at it to find a long earthworm around his neck. Lemon is absolutely disgusted by earthworms and threw the thing away from him. He continued to lay in the serene moment before feeling another one on his neck. He threw this earthworm aside as well. It happened again, and this time Lemon woke himself up. He felt around his neck and found something sticky, which he assumed to be drool. He had drooled on himself, and that's what caused those weird dreams. Something weirder was happening though. On his bed, there were 4 indents. looking as if someone had been on all fours looking over him. This scared him more than the dream ever could, and he became a light sleeper following that night. Lemon awoke the next day and decided to check his email before heading out for the day. He saw that he had an email from Funnymouth. The email read, "I had a good time to talk to you. It can be fun again. You'll see what. I don't like stop it." Lemon had never given Funnymouth his email. It could have been one of the others, but he didn't know who. He didn't want to talk to him, and after a short back and forth, he ends up blocking him. With that all done, he headed out for the day. After a while, he came back and checked his email again. Nothing from Funnymouth. Of course, he had blocked him. But he did have one email. It was from George. Apparently their website had gone down. Lemon checked the website and saw that it redirected to blood.com. The only thing on the website was a blurry image of a man with his tongue out in a strange way. The face was pixelated and hard to make out. When he told George about this, he said that all he saw was an error 404 page with coming soon at the bottom. That didn't make sense. He was looking at the page right now. It was that weird face. A screenshot of the error 404 was sent by George, and that confused things even more. While examining the website, he noticed that the face wasn't pixelated at all. It was created from the word Funnymouth, over and over again. This was really starting to irritate him. So much so that he unblocked Funnymouth to ask him what he'd done to the site. As soon as he did, a torrent of emails came in from him. They all said similar things, but a recurring mention of having a handsome face was the most blatant. He finally told him to stop and sent a very kind email asking him to undo whatever he did to his site. This was met with the same looking at you emoji from before. This sent Lemon reeling. He was so angry he slapped his monitor. It flew off his desk, but luckily didn't break. That night, he stared at his ceiling fan trying to sleep. He would eventually go under and be met with the same woods as the night before. He knew what to expect, but as the slimy feeling approached his neck, he didn't bother to throw it aside. Then it creeped up towards his mouth. He tried to will himself awake, but couldn't. He felt the thing worm its way into his mouth. This is when he noticed that it wasn't a worm. It was actually a finger, then two, then four. The hand clutched his lower jaw and pulled downward. With a pop, his jaw was dislocated. This is when he was able to finally force himself awake. He rushed towards the bathroom and turned on the light. He stared into the mirror for a minute. No reaction, no feeling whatsoever. Then he smiled. Well, as best he could. His jaw was completely broken, hanging around his neck. His tongue lolled out listlessly, like a dead worm. His teeth were no longer rooted to his mouth, and instead just hung on by threads of flesh. He started to laugh. It came out more like a gurgle. What a handsome face, he thought. What a funny mouth. Funny mouth. A funny mouth. Lemon rejoined the chat and typed, "I see your handsome face." George responded, "Hey, where have you been? Hey, Charles?" A message appeared on screen. Lemon Lime Skull is now known as Funnymouth. A final use of the looking at you emoji appeared before Funnymouth left the channel. Big thanks to my Patreon supporters Icy Dice, Nora Kingsley, and Blow a Nose. You all really help keep this channel going. This has been the first volume of the Internet Creepypasta Iceberg. If you have stories that you think I should include, please comment them down below. I have most of the iceberg already complete, but I love adding new stories as I go. Thank you everyone, and have a good night.